The crystalline probe appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system without warning. It was beautiful in a cold way, like a giant diamond spinning slowly in the darkness of space. The probe sent out signals that made every communication device on Earth buzz with activity. Admiral Deho stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Station, watching the strange object on the main screen. His gray hair was neat as always, but his eyes showed concern. Beside him, Commander Mina checked the readings on her tablet. She was younger than the Admiral, but her skills had earned her respect among the fleet. "Sir, it's broadcasting on all frequencies," Mina reported. "The message is, well, it's not what we expected." The probe suddenly projected a hologram that filled the center of the room. A tall alien figure appeared, wearing what looked like armor made of flowing metal. Its face was sharp and proud, with eyes that glowed like blue stars. When it spoke, its voice was deep and commanding. "People of Earth," the alien began, "I am High Commander Vextar of the Galactic Empire. Your world has been watched, and you are now called to serve. A great threat comes from beyond our galaxy. The Devour Swarm approaches, and all species must contribute their finest warships to stop them." Admiral Deho raised an eyebrow. He had spent 30 years in space, but this was his first contact with aliens. The message continued with details about a meeting point near the galaxy's edge. Other species were already gathering their most powerful ships. "Each species must bring their best weapons and strongest vessels," Vextar declared. "The fate of all life depends on this united effort. Do not disappoint the Empire." The hologram faded, leaving the humans alone with their thoughts. "Well," said Mina, "that was dramatic." Admiral Deho walked to the window that looked out at Earth. The blue and green planet seemed peaceful from here. He had always known that someday humans might meet aliens. He just hadn't expected them to immediately demand help with a war. "What ships do we have available?" he asked. Mina pulled up the fleet roster. 12 vessels from the Outer System Patrol. They're not exactly warships, sir. Most of them were built for asteroid mining and cargo transport. We added weapons and armor later. "Show me," Deho said. The screen displayed humanity's space fleet. The ships looked nothing like the sleek alien vessel in the hologram. They were boxy and practical, covered in thick armor plating. Their weapons were simple but effective. Railguns, missile launchers, and industrial lasers originally meant for cutting through asteroids. "The flagship is the Resilience," Mina continued. "Captain Taejin commands her. He's one of our best pilots, trained on mining operations before joining the military." Admiral Deho nodded. He knew Taejin well. The young captain had a reputation for solving problems in unexpected ways. If anyone could represent humanity in this alien gathering, it was him. Hours later, Captain Taejin arrived at the station. He was tall and lean, with steady hands and alert eyes. His uniform was practical rather than fancy, like everything else in the human fleet. "Admiral," Taejin said, saluting, "I've reviewed the alien message. This Devour Swarm sounds dangerous. What do you think of our chances?" Deho asked. Taejin looked at the ship specifications on the screen. "Our vessels aren't pretty, but they're tough. We built them to work in harsh conditions, and our crews know how to fix anything that breaks. The aliens might be disappointed when they see us, though." "Let them be disappointed," said Admiral Deho. "We'll send what we have." The next day, Captain Taejin boarded the Resilience. The ship's corridors were narrow and functional, lined with pipes and cables. It smelled of metal and machine oil. This wasn't a vessel built for comfort or beauty. It was built to work. In the engine room, Chief Engineer So Young was checking the power systems. She was small but tough, with grease-stained hands and an engineer's mind. Her team respected her because she could fix anything and improve most things. "Captain," she said, looking up from a control panel, "I've been thinking about these aliens and their war. Our ships might not look like much, but they have advantages." "Such as?" Taejin asked. "Reliability," So Young replied. "These ships were designed to operate alone for months. We don't need supply lines or fancy maintenance. If something breaks, we fix it with spare parts and determination." On the bridge, Navigation Officer Jin Ho was plotting courses through asteroid fields that would terrify most pilots. He had been born on a mining station and learned to fly by dodging rocks and debris. To him, space navigation was just another engineering problem. "Sir," Jin Ho reported, "I've calculated the route to the meeting point. It's far from any star system in empty space. Good place for a gathering if you don't want to be noticed." Weapons Officer Hyunwoo was running tests on the ship's armaments. The railguns were simple but powerful. designed to break apart asteroids with kinetic force. The missile launchers carried nuclear warheads originally meant for mining operations. The main laser was an industrial cutting tool, but it could slice through almost anything. "Captain," Hyunwoo said, "our weapons might seem primitive compared to what the aliens have, but they're reliable. No fancy energy systems to fail, no exotic matter that might run out, just good, honest firepower." As the 12 human ships prepared to leave, Admiral Daeho sent a final message to Captain Tae-jin. "Remember," the Admiral said, "you're not just representing our fleet, you're representing all of humanity. Show them what we're capable of." "Yes, sir," Tae-jin replied. "We'll do our best." The human fleet departed from Earth's orbit in formation. The 12 ships looked small against the vastness of space, but they moved with purpose. Each vessel carried a crew trained in mining, construction, and repair work. They were not soldiers, but they were problem solvers. As they traveled toward the unknown, Captain Tae-jin reviewed what they knew about the Devour Swarm. The aliens had shared few details, but the threat seemed to consume entire worlds. Other species were bringing their most advanced weapons to fight it. "Sir," said Commander Mina, "what if our ships aren't enough? What if the aliens were expecting something more impressive?" Captain Tae-jin looked at the stars ahead. "Then they'll learn something about humans," he said with a slight smile. "We might not look like much, but we get the job done." The human ships continued toward their destiny, carrying crews who saw every problem as something to be solved, every challenge as something to be overcome. They had no idea that their practical approach would soon change the fate of the galaxy. The meeting point was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Hundreds of alien warships floated in perfect formation near the edge of the galaxy. Some vessels were so large they looked like floating cities. Others glowed with strange energy that made the space around them shimmer. Captain Tae-jin stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the alien fleet through the main screen. His 12 ships looked tiny compared to the massive dreadnoughts surrounding them. The alien vessels were beautiful and terrifying, with smooth curves and weapons that hummed with power. "Those are some impressive ships," said Commander Mina, studying the alien fleet. "Look at the size of that one." She pointed to a vessel that was easily 10 times larger than any human ship. Its hull was covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with blue light. Smaller craft moved around it like insects around a lamp. "Pretty, but probably complicated," replied Chief Engineer So Young from her position at the engineering station. She was more interested in how things worked than how they looked. "I bet they need special fuel and exotic materials to run." A communication request came through from the alien command ship. High Commander Vextar appeared on the screen, his glowing eyes scanning the human vessels with obvious disappointment. "These are your warships?" the alien commander asked, his voice cold with displeasure. "They appear to be industrial vessels." "They are," Captain Tae-jin replied calmly. "We converted our mining and construction ships for military use. They're not much to look at, but they work." Vextar's expression grew darker. "This is not a construction project, human. This is war against a force that has consumed entire civilizations. We need weapons of destruction, not tools for building." "Sometimes they're the same thing," Tae-jin said with a slight smile that made the alien commander frown. Over the next few hours, representatives from different species visited the human ships. Most of them left shaking their heads in confusion or disappointment. The humans watched as elegant alien officers toured their cramped, practical corridors filled with spare parts and repair equipment. An Etherian fleet singer named Lishan was particularly vocal about her concerns. Her people built ships that looked like works of art, with weapons that sang as they fired. She stared at the human railguns with disgust. "These are not weapons of war," she declared, her musical voice sharp with disapproval. "They are tools for breaking rocks." "Exactly," replied Engineer So Young with a grin. "And we're very good at breaking rocks." The Etherian officer didn't understand why the human engineer seemed so pleased about this fact. She left the ship muttering about primitive species and their crude technology. The Gorians were massive aliens who built equally massive ships. Their vessels were covered in heavy armor and carried weapons that could crack planets. Their representative, a warrior named Thok, examined the human missile launchers with amusement. "Nuclear weapons?" Thok rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "We used such simple devices centuries ago. Our plasma cannons can destroy entire fleets." Weapons Officer Hyunwoo nodded politely. "Those sound very impressive," he said. "But these missiles are reliable. They go where we point them. And they explode when we want them to. Sometimes simple is better. Thok laughed, a sound like boulders falling down a mountain. You humans are either very brave or very foolish. I hope you prove to be the first. The most unusual visitors were the mycelial, a species that grew their ships like living creatures. Their representative, a being that looked like a walking tree, examined the human industrial lasers with curiosity. Your cutting tools are efficient, the mycelial observed, speaking through chemical sense that the translation device converted to words, but they lack adaptation. Our bioweapons learn and evolve during battle. Navigation Officer Jin-Ho nodded respectfully. That sounds useful, he admitted, but our lasers work the same way every time. We know exactly what they'll do in any situation. Predictability is a weakness, the mycelial replied. Or a strength, Jin-Ho countered. Depends on how you use it. As the visits continued, Captain Tae-jin began to understand the alien way of thinking. They built weapons to be as powerful and advanced as possible. Each species competed to create the most impressive and destructive devices. Their ships were marvels of technology, but they were also incredibly complex. The humans had taken a different approach. Their ships were simple and practical. Every system had backups, and every backup had backups. The crews could repair almost anything with basic tools and spare parts. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were trying to get the job done. Chief Engineer So Young gathered her team in the engine room to discuss what they had learned. The room was crowded with machinery and tools, but everyone found a place to sit or lean against a console. Did you notice something about all these fancy alien ships? She asked her engineers. They're huge, said Engineer Dongwoo, a quiet man who specialized in systems analysis. And beautiful, added Engineer Yu-jin, who appreciated good design even if she preferred function over form. They're specialized, So Young continued. Each one is built for a specific type of warfare. Energy weapons, exotic matter manipulators, quantum disruptors. Very impressive, but also very limited. The engineering team nodded. They understood the problem with overspecialization. Mining operations had taught them that the best tools were versatile ones that could handle unexpected situations. What about our ships? Asked Engineer Min-ho, the youngest member of the team. Our ships are generalists, So Young replied. We can cut, blast, build, repair, or modify anything we encounter. The aliens see that as primitive, but it might be exactly what this situation needs. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Tae-jin was receiving the mission briefing from High Commander Vexitar. The holographic display showed images that made the human crew uncomfortable. The Devour Swarm was a collection of massive biomechanical creatures that fed on energy and matter. They consumed entire planets, growing larger and more intelligent with each meal. They have already devoured 17 worlds, Vexitar explained, his voice grim. Each time they feed, they become stronger and more adaptable. Our initial attacks only made them more dangerous. How do they adapt? Asked Commander Mina, studying the tactical data. They absorb and analyze whatever attacks them, replied the alien commander. Energy weapons feed them power. Exotic matter becomes part of their structure. Even quantum effects can be incorporated into their biology. Captain Tae-jin frowned. What about physical damage? Old-fashioned kinetic weapons? Ineffective, Vexitar stated dismissively. Their hulls can regenerate faster than simple projectiles can damage them. The human captain didn't argue, but he exchanged a meaningful look with his crew. The aliens had already decided what would and wouldn't work. They had built their strategy around complex energy weapons and advanced technology, but humans had learned to solve problems by thinking differently. As the briefing ended, the alien fleet began to move toward the swarm's last known position. The human ships followed, their simple engines running smoothly, while some of the more advanced alien vessels experienced mysterious power fluctuations. Sir, said Chief Engineer So Young over the communication system, I've been thinking about this swarm. They adapt to whatever attacks them, right? That's what the aliens say, Tae-jin replied. But adaptation takes time, So Young continued. And it requires understanding what you're adapting to. What if we hit them with something they can't understand quickly enough? What do you have in mind? The captain asked. I'm not sure yet, So Young admitted, but I have some ideas about how to modify our equipment. Give me some time to work on it. As the combined fleet moved deeper into space, the humans continued to puzzle over the problem. The aliens had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, but those weapons had failed. Maybe the solution required a different approach entirely. Maybe it required thinking like miners instead of warriors. The Devour swarm emerged from the darkness between stars like a nightmare made real. The creatures were massive beyond imagination, each one larger than the biggest alien dreadnought. Their bodies writhed and pulsed with stolen energy from dozens of consumed worlds. Biomechanical tendrils reached out hungrily, searching for new sources of matter and power. Captain Tae-jin watched from the bridge of the Resilience as the alien fleet prepared for battle. The magnificent ships that had seemed so impressive at the meeting point now looked fragile compared to the monstrosities they faced. Each swarm creature was a twisted fusion of organic flesh and mechanical components, covered in armor plates that seemed to shift and change as he watched. "How many of them are there?" asked Commander Mina, her voice tight with concern. Chief Analyst Yunji, a quiet woman who specialized in pattern recognition, studied the sensor readings carefully. "At least 40 major constructs," she reported, "but they're connected by smaller feeding tendrils. It's like looking at a massive organism that's spread across several light years." High Commander Vextar's voice came over the communication channel, addressing the entire fleet. "All vessels prepare for coordinated assault. Focus fire on the largest constructs. Show them the might of the Galactic Empire." The alien fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their weapons were beautiful and terrible, filling space with streams of pure energy and exotic matter. Plasma cannons fired beams of superheated gas that could melt asteroids. Quantum disruptors bent space itself into weapon form. The mycelial ships released clouds of bioweapons that sought targets like living missiles. For a moment it seemed like the attack might work. The energy beams struck the swarm creatures and burned through their outer layers. Explosions bloomed across the biomechanical hulls, sending debris spinning into space. The aliens cheered as their advanced weapons tore into the enemy. Then everything changed. The swarm creatures stopped writhing and became perfectly still. Their damaged sections began to glow with the same energy that had attacked them. Within minutes, the biomechanical armor was not just repaired but improved. The creatures had absorbed the alien weapons and made them part of their own structure. "Impossible," breathed Fleet Singer Lishan over the communication channel. "They're incorporating our weapon signatures into their defensive systems." The swarm began to fight back, using modified versions of the aliens' own weapons against them. Plasma beams struck Etherian light cruisers, but these beams were different, more focused, more efficient than the originals. The creatures had not just absorbed the energy. They had improved it. A massive Gorian battle platform tried to ram one of the smaller swarm creatures. The biomechanical monster wrapped tendrils around the alien ship and began to dissolve its armor. Within hours, the platform was gone, and the swarm creature had grown larger and more complex. "They're not just defending themselves," observed Tactical Officer Dong Hyun, watching the battle with growing alarm. "They're learning from every attack. Each weapon we use teaches them something new." Captain Tae-jin ordered the human fleet to hold position well behind the main battle line. This earned him angry demands from High Commander Vextar, but Tae-jin ignored them. His crews were busy with a different kind of preparation. "Ma'am," said Engineer So-young to Chief Analyst Yoon-ji, "what patterns are you seeing in their adaptation process?" Yoon-ji pulled up her analysis on the main screen. "Each creature responds to attack within 30 seconds, she reported. But the adaptation follows predictable rules. They analyze the energy signature, the delivery method, and the intended effect. Then they create countermeasures based on that analysis." "What about their structure?" asked Navigation Officer Jin Ho. "How do they hold together?" "The smaller tendrils," Yoon-ji replied, highlighting parts of her display. "They're like the nervous system of a larger organism. The major constructs are connected through these feeding channels. Information and resources flow between them constantly." Chief Engineer So-young studied the data with the focused attention she usually reserved for complex machinery problems. "They're treating each attack like a technical manual," she said slowly. "Every weapon teaches them how to build a better defense." "So what do we do?" asked Weapons Officer Hyunwoo. "We don't give them a manual to read," So-young replied with a grin. While the main battle continued to go badly for the alien forces, the human crews worked frantically to modify their equipment. But instead of upgrading their weapons to match alien technology, they were doing something else entirely. Engineer Dongwoo and his team were removing components from their systems, making them simpler rather than more complex. Engineer Yujin worked on the industrial fabricators, preparing them to produce specialized ammunition during combat. Engineer Minho helped modify the mining drones that each ship carried for construction work. "Sir," reported Chief Engineer So Young to Captain Tae-jin, "we're ready to try our approach." "What exactly is our approach?" asked Commander Mina. "We're going to treat them like a mining operation," So Young explained. "Big, complicated, dangerous, but ultimately just another engineering problem that needs to be solved." The alien retreat was becoming a rout. Ship after ship fell to the swarm's adaptive defenses. The creatures grew larger and more intelligent with each victory, incorporating new technologies into their biomechanical forms. Some had developed energy shields that perfectly countered Etherian weapons. Others had grown armor specifically designed to resist Gorian plasma cannons. High Commander Vextar's voice crackled over the communication system, desperate and angry. "Human vessels, you will advance and engage immediately. This is not a request." "Negative," Captain Tae-jin replied calmly. "We're still analyzing the situation." "There is nothing to analyze," Vextar shouted. "The swarm is destroying us. We need every ship in the battle." "What we need," Tae-jin said, "is to understand what we're really fighting." Chief Analyst Yoonji had continued her detailed study of the swarm creatures. "Captain," she announced, "I think I know what these things are." "Tell me," Tae-jin ordered. "They're not weapons," Yoonji explained. "They're refugees. Look at the pattern of their consumption. They're not destroying worlds randomly. They're absorbing technology and biological material, but they're also preserving it. I think they're trying to recreate something they've lost." Navigation Officer Jin Ho looked up from his console. "You mean they're not attacking us because they're evil?" "They're attacking us because they're starving," Yoonji replied, "and because they don't know any other way to survive." This revelation changed everything for the human crews. They had been preparing to fight monsters, but now they understood they were dealing with desperate beings who had lost their home and were consuming everything around them in a misguided attempt to rebuild it. "That's even worse," said Weapons Officer Hyun-woo. "How do you fight something that's not evil, just hungry and scared?" "You don't fight it," replied Chief Engineer So Young. "You solve its problem." Captain Tae-jin made a decision that would have seemed insane to the retreating alien fleet. Instead of joining the hopeless battle against the main swarm creatures, he ordered his ships to target something the other species had ignored completely: the small feeding tendrils that connected the biomechanical monsters. "All ships, prepare for precision operations," he announced to his fleet. "We're going to perform surgery on this thing." The human vessels moved forward, not toward the massive swarm constructs that were destroying the alien fleet, but toward the delicate connections that held the entire organism together. They weren't going to try to overpower the creatures. They were going to take them apart piece by piece like engineers dismantling a complex machine. As the 12 human ships advanced toward the swarm, their crews felt nervous but determined. They were about to attempt something that no military force in the galaxy had ever tried: treating a galaxy-threatening enemy as an engineering problem rather than a target to be destroyed. The first human ship to engage the swarm was the Resilience, with Captain Tae-jin personally leading the attack. But this wasn't the kind of attack the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of firing at the massive biomechanical constructs that had defeated the alien fleet, Tae-jin targeted something much smaller and seemingly less important. Weapons Officer Hyun-woo, target the feeding tendril connecting constructs 7 and 12. Tae-jin ordered calmly. "Use the mining laser lowest power setting." "Sir?" Hyun-woo asked, confused. "Lowest power?" "We're not trying to destroy it," Tae-jin explained. "We're trying to cut it. Like severing a cable, not blowing up a building." The industrial laser fired, its beam designed for precision cutting through asteroid materials. The swarm creature it struck began to analyze the attack, just as it had with every alien weapon. But something unexpected happened. By the time the biomechanical systems understood what they were being attacked with, the tendrils had already been severed. The two massive constructs suddenly lost connection with each other. They writhed in confusion, their shared intelligence disrupted. For the first time since the battle began, parts of the swarm seemed vulnerable. "It worked," said Commander Mina in amazement. "They can't adapt to something that cuts faster than they can analyze it." High Commander Vextar's voice crackled over the communication system. "Human vessel, what are you doing?" You are attacking the wrong targets. No, sir, replied Captain Taejin. We're attacking the right targets. You are just looking in the wrong place. The other human ships moved into action following their captain's example, but each vessel used a slightly different approach, because each crew understood their tools in their own way. Captain Minsu of the ship Steadfast used his railgun to punch holes through the biomechanical armor, faster than it could repair itself. The kinetic projectiles were simple chunks of metal, but they moved so fast that the swarm's adaptive systems couldn't create defenses quickly enough. It's like shooting at a target that's trying to put on armor while you're firing, explained weapons officer Jae-won to his crew. By the time they figure out what hit them, the next shot is already on the way. Captain Yeon-ho of the ship Endurance took a different approach. His crew used their industrial fabricators to create specialized ammunition during the battle. Each missile was designed for a specific target, built on the spot as they identified weak points in the swarm's structure. We're making custom tools for each job, Chief Engineer Hai-jin explained, as her team worked frantically in the fabrication bay. The swarm can adapt to weapons they've seen before, but they can't adapt to weapons that don't exist until we need them. The most creative approach came from Captain Ji-won of the ship Determination. Her crew deployed their mining drones, originally designed for construction work in asteroid fields. But instead of building something, the drones began systematically dismantling the swarm creatures. We're not fighting them, Captain Ji-won explained to the amazed alien observers. We're taking them apart for salvage. The mining drones attached themselves to the biomechanical hulls and began their work. They cut through armor plating, disconnected power conduits, and removed structural components with the same methodical precision they used on asteroid mining operations. The swarm creatures tried to adapt, but how do you adapt to being carefully dismantled by machines that treat your fearsome form like raw materials? Chief Engineer So Young coordinated the overall human effort from the Resilience. Remember, she announced to all ships, we're not trying to kill these things. We're trying to understand them, save anything that looks like a data core or communication system. This was the moment when the alien fleet began to realize that humans thought differently about warfare. While every other species had tried to overpower the swarm with superior weapons, the humans were treating the galaxy-threatening creatures like a complex engineering problem that needed to be solved step by step. The results were dramatic. As the human crew systematically severed connections and dismantled components, the massive swarm constructs began to lose coordination. Creatures that had seemed invincible minutes before were now stumbling through space, unable to communicate with each other or share their adaptive improvements. Target the neural networks next, ordered Tactical Officer Dong-hyun, studying the patterns of biomechanical activity. If we can isolate each creature's control systems, they won't be able to coordinate attacks. Navigation Officer Jin-ho piloted the Resilience through spaces that no military pilot would have attempted, using techniques learned from navigating asteroid fields and construction sites. The massive swarm tendrils became obstacles to dodge rather than weapons to fear. It's like flying through a three-dimensional construction site, Jin-ho muttered as he threaded the ship between writhing biomechanical limbs. Dangerous but manageable if you know what you're doing. The alien fleet watched in stunned silence as 12 small human ships accomplished what hundreds of advanced warships could not. The humans weren't winning through superior firepower or advanced technology. They were winning through superior understanding of the problem. Chief Analyst Yoon-ji made a crucial discovery during the battle. Captain, she announced, I'm detecting preserved data signatures inside the swarm constructs. These creatures aren't just consuming civilizations, they're storing them. What do you mean? Asked Captain Taejin. Every world they've consumed, every species they've absorbed, the information is still there, Yoon-ji explained. It's like they're trying to keep everything they've taken, but they don't know how to organize it properly. This revelation changed the humans' approach yet again. Instead of simply dismantling the swarm creatures, they began carefully extracting the stored data and biological samples. The mining equipment that had been designed to process asteroids proved perfect for harvesting these preserved materials. Engineer Dongwoo developed a technique for safely removing data cores without damaging the information inside. It's like archaeological work, he explained to his team. We have to be careful not to destroy what we're trying to save. Engineer Yoojin discovered that many of the biomechanical components contained intact genetic information from consumed species. They're not just eating these civilizations, she reported. They're trying to preserve them, but their method is killing the very thing they're trying to save. The battle continued, but it was no longer a battle in any traditional sense. The humans had transformed it into the largest salvage operation in galactic history. They worked with the methodical precision of experienced miners and construction workers, treating each swarm creature as a complex puzzle to be solved rather than an enemy to be destroyed. High Commander Vextar finally demanded a direct explanation. Human Captain, explain your tactics immediately. Why are you not using maximum firepower against these creatures? Because maximum firepower isn't the right tool for this job, replied Captain Taejin. These creatures aren't our enemies. They're refugees who have lost their way. They're consuming everything around them because they don't know any other way to survive. Refugees? Vextar's voice was incredulous. They have destroyed 17 worlds. Accidentally, Taejin explained. They're trying to rebuild their lost civilization, but they don't understand that their method of preservation is actually destruction. We're going to show them a better way. As the human fleet continued their systematic dismantling of the swarm, other species began to understand what they were witnessing. The humans weren't just solving the immediate crisis. They were treating the root cause of the problem. Chief Engineer So Young opened a channel to all the human ships. Remember, people, she announced, we're not just taking these things apart. We're learning how to put them back together the right way. The galaxy held its breath as 12 mining ships continued their impossible work, transforming a military disaster into an engineering triumph. The humans had found a solution that no one else had even considered. Instead of destroying the threat, they were going to fix it. The transformation of the battlefield was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where once massive biomechanical monsters had writhed through space consuming everything in their path, now there were organized work sites with human ships methodically processing the dismantled creatures like the universe's largest salvage operation. Captain Taejin coordinated the effort from the Bridge of the Resilience, treating the galaxy-threatening crisis like a complex mining project. His crews had successfully separated most of the major swarm constructs from each other, breaking down the massive collective intelligence into smaller, manageable units. Status report, he requested from his chief engineer. We've successfully extracted data cores from 15 constructs, So Young reported, her voice tired but satisfied. The information inside is incredible, Captain. These creatures have preserved the complete cultural and biological records of dozens of civilizations. Commander Mina studied the tactical display, which now showed human ships surrounded by carefully organized fields of salvaged materials. It looks like a construction site out there, she observed. That's exactly what it is, Taejin replied. We're just building solutions instead of destroying problems. The alien fleet remained at a safe distance, their commanders struggling to understand what they were seeing. High Commander Vextar had stopped demanding immediate military action, and was now asking increasingly confused questions about human salvage procedures. Human Captain, Vextar's voice came over the communication channel. Explain to me again why you are treating these world-killing monsters like mining materials. Because that's what they are, Taejin replied patiently. They're not monsters. They're a civilization that lost its home and doesn't know how to build a new one without destroying everything around them. We're teaching them. Chief Analyst Yoonji had been working around the clock to decode the information extracted from the swarm constructs. Her discoveries were reshaping everyone's understanding of the situation. Captain, she announced, I've translated some of the core memories. The swarm originated from the Andromeda galaxy. Their home was destroyed by a cosmic disaster. Their star went supernova unexpectedly. The survivors tried to preserve their civilization by converting themselves into biomechanical forms that could survive in space. But something went wrong. Guest Navigation Officer Jinho. Very wrong, Yoonji confirmed. The conversion process was incomplete. They retained their biological need to consume and grow, but they lost their understanding of how to create and build, so they've been wandering between galaxies, consuming other civilizations in a desperate attempt to recreate what they lost. This revelation transformed the human approach yet again. They weren't just dismantling the swarm creatures, they were performing the galaxy's first interspecies therapy. Session engineer Dong Wu had developed a technique for communicating directly with the isolated swarm constructs through their extracted data cores. It's like talking to someone who's been in a coma, he explained. They're aware but confused and frightened. The first successful communication came from the smallest swarm construct, which human crews had carefully separated from the main collective. Engineer Yujin had connected one of the data cores to a translation system originally designed for analyzing asteroid mineral compositions. The message that came through was heartbreaking in its simplicity. Home? Where is home? We are lost. We are hungry. We remember green worlds and warm suns, but we cannot find them. We consume, but we are still empty. Help us remember how to build instead of take. Captain Tae-jin shared this message with the entire fleet, both human and alien. The response was immediate and profound. The galaxy's military commanders suddenly understood that they had been fighting refugees, not invaders. This changes everything. Fleet singer Lishan whispered over the communication channel, her musical voice filled with sorrow and wonder. We have been trying to destroy beings who were seeking help. But the humans had already moved beyond fighting to fixing. Chief Engineer. So Young had assembled teams from all 12 human ships to work on the most ambitious construction project in galactic history. We're going to build them a new home, she announced to her crews, using the biomechanical materials they've been carrying around, but organizing it properly this time. The work was unlike anything the human engineers had ever attempted. They had to combine technology from dozens of different species, all preserved within the swarm's biomechanical matrix. But these were people who specialized in making things work, regardless of how complex or unusual they might be. Engineer Minho discovered that the swarm's biomechanical components could be reprogrammed to create instead of consume. It's like they've been using construction equipment for demolition, he explained. We just have to show them how to reverse the process. The construction work began in earnest. Human fabricators worked alongside reprogrammed biomechanical systems to create habitat modules from the salvaged materials. The design was unlike anything any species had built before, a fusion of organic and mechanical systems that could house the diverse collection of consciousness patterns preserved within the swarm. Captain Yanho's crew specialized in the life support systems. We're not just building homes, he explained to the fascinated alien observers. We're building bodies. The swarm lost their original forms, but we can give them new ones. The most delicate work was performed by Captain Jiwon's team, who handled the consciousness transfer procedures. They had to carefully extract individual awareness patterns from the collective swarm matrix and give them independent existence. Within the new habitat modules, it's like performing surgery on thoughts, explained Chief Medical Officer Su Jin, who had trained as a mining medic but found herself dealing with alien psychology. Each consciousness is unique, but they've been tangled together for so long that they've almost forgotten how to be individuals. The alien fleet watched in amazement as the human work crews transformed the space around them. Where the swarm had once spread destruction and chaos, human engineering was creating order and hope. The massive biomechanical constructs were being converted into thriving habitats, where rescued consciousness patterns could live and grow. High Commander, Vextar requested permission to board the Resilience and observe the work directly. Captain Tae-jin welcomed him to the bridge, where the alien commander watched human crews perform miracles of improvised engineering. I do not understand how this is possible, Vextar admitted. Your species has turned a military disaster into a construction project. You have transformed world killers into refugees and given them homes. This is not warfare as any species practices it. It's not warfare at all, replied Captain Tae-jin. It's problem-solving. The problem was that a bunch of beings lost their home and didn't know how to build a new one without hurting others. So we helped them learn. Chief Engineer So Young approached the command station, her uniform stained with biomechanical lubricants and her hands covered in the residue of a dozen different alien technologies. Captain, she reported, the first habitat cluster is ready for occupancy. We've successfully transferred 47 individual consciousness patterns from the collective matrix. They're requesting permission to begin construction of their own modules. Granted, Tae-jin replied. Give them whatever resources and technical support they need. As the work continued, something beautiful began to emerge in the space around the human fleet. The former swarm constructs were being transformed into a thriving community of diverse beings, each contributing their preserved knowledge and abilities to the construction of a new civilization. The galaxy had been saved not through superior firepower or advanced weapons, but through the simple human understanding that most problems could be solved with the right tools, enough patience and a willingness to help others learn how to build instead of destroy.